Anyone who believes that gardening begins in the spring and ends in the fall is missing the better part of the year. For gardening begins in January with a dream. Josephine Noose. I am Abigail Cook, and I'm here to talk to you today about attainable, sustainable gardening. I am a greenhouse manager at a private country club in Maryland, and part of my job includes growing organically produced vegetables and herbs for our culinary staff. So, what is sustainable gardening? According to San Mateo County's Extension Office, sustainable gardening is gardening in which you work with nature to improve the health of your garden and reduce negative impacts on the environment. Some examples of processes involved in sustainable gardening include double digging. This is a process by which you till, add compost, and till again. This increases aeration in the soil for proper root growth and improves your drainage. Composting is the breakdown of organic matter into the soil, and this helps reduce your need for fertilizer. Mulching and cover cropping helps reduce your soil temperatures at the surface and improves your water retention in the soil. According to Weed Science Journal, cover cropping can reduce weed seed buildup in your soil for up to 60%. For anyone who has ever hand weeded a garden before, you realize that that is a tremendous help. Integrated pest management is a process in which you would scout for insects in your garden, insects and disease. In modern agriculture, the point of view is that any insect is a bad insect. This is not true. There are many beneficial predators out there that help reduce your pests. Knowing the difference between the two is a big help. Having a reduction in chemical usage fosters a strong environment for your beneficial predators. They include things like praying mantis, wasps, and ladybugs, as well as your avian friends like mockingbirds, who eat a ton of insects and help clear them out of your garden. Reducing chemical use also is beneficial for pollinators, which are vital for pollinating all of your vegetables. I can't tell you how many people have asked me why they didn't get cucumbers one year, and a lot of times it's because they don't have bees. So fostering a safe environment for your pollinators is also very important. So what can we do to start a garden and grow sustainably? One thing is site selection. Most of your vegetables need 6 to 12 hours of direct sunlight. That may seem like a lot, but to produce fruit is a lot of work, and they need a lot of light to do so. If you are growing leafy vegetables like kale and lettuce and things like that, you could probably get away with 4 hours of direct sunlight, but more is better. Siting your garden somewhere where you have a windbreak, whether it's natural in the form of a hedge or artificial in the form of a fence or your home, helps prevent dry out. This is part of the process in which you really don't want to be adding so much water so you have a lot of runoff. So having that windbreak helps reduce your water loss. In my gardens, in the first year, I still had quite a lot of open soil space. This is part of the process in getting your garden to that point. It can take a couple of years until you reach a point where your garden is really sustainable and almost self-sufficient. So one thing to keep in mind in growing things year after year is to rotate your crops. According to Soil and Tillage Research, a 3-year crop rotation dramatically and significantly reduces soil-borne diseases. In the photo that I have in my slides, I'm growing in this photo beets, Swiss chard, cabbage. These are my winter crops. in the summer, I make sure that I don't grow any root crops or leaf crops in those areas. This year, I have tomatoes growing there. It's a totally different family of plants, and that helps reduce your pests. This slide shows my garden as of this year. As you can see, I have almost no soil showing. My cover crop is clover, and it forms also a rhizome mat, so each little branch comes up, falls over, and roots in. So that creates a mat that produces an area that weeds really have a hard time growing through. It also fixes nitrogen. It's a legume, so it pulls nitrogen from the atmosphere down into the roots and into the soil. And that is also great because it's free fertilizer. So that also reduces the negative impact of using chemical fertilizers in your garden. I get such a kick out of growing vegetables. In this slide, I have two of my members of my team, and this is harvest day in year 2 of the garden. We have kohlrabi and kale, big, beautiful, wonderful crops that we grew without chemical fertilizers and without pesticides. So it can be done. It's a lot of work up front, but eventually a garden gets to a point where it is pretty self-sustaining. So why would you want to put in all this work for something as simple as a tomato that you could very easily get at the grocery store? Well, I have found myself that tomatoes are tasteless at the grocery store, and according to the University of Georgia Extension Program, they harvest their tomatoes at what is called the mature green stage. So this means that the tomatoes are fully formed, but not yet ripe. So they do this because it's easier to pick and process and get those tomatoes to the grocery store without bruising them or cutting them up or squishing them. So for mass production, this is really important. But if you've ever tasted a grocery store tomato, they're pretty gross. The University of Georgia does not wax their fruit or use ethylene gas, though most producers do this. Fruit wax is a natural wax that they coat fruit with to make it glossy, so it's pretty and you want to buy it. It also helps preserve freshness and moisture in the fruit. It does wash off, supposedly. I have a really hard time getting it off and find that it changes the texture of the skin of most things that I've bought that are covered in wax. So I hope that I have helped you understand some of the processes behind sustainable gardening and why you should do it. I know that eating the first ripe tomato at the beginning of summer is one of the most satisfying things, and seeing healthy plants that I know are not covered in chemicals is so fulfilling for me. I hope that you will be inspired to start your own sustainable garden.